Apuryamanam achala pratishtam samudram apapravishanti advat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve shashantim apnoti na kama kami. Translation: a person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. Text 71. Vihaya kamanya sarvan pumamscharati nishpribha nirmamo nirahankara sashantim adhigachati. Translation: a person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. Text 72, final text of chapter 2. Esha brahmishtitya partha nainam prapya vamuhyati stitvasham antakalopi brahma nirvana mrichati. Translation: that is the way of the spiritual and godly life. After attaining which a man is not bewildered, being so situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God. Chapter 3, Karma Yoga. Arjuna uvacha yayashi chet karmanaste mata buddhe janardana tat kim karmani gore mam niyojayasi keshava. Translation: Arjuna said, O Janardana, O Keshava, why do you urge me to engage in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work? Text 2. Buddhim mohaya shubhame tad ekam vada nishchitya yena shreyoham apnuyam. Translation: my intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively what is most beneficial for me. Text 3. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Lokeshmin Vividha Nishta Pura Prokta Maya Nagha Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam Karma Yogena Yoginam. Translation: the Blessed Lord said, O sinless Arjuna, I have already explained that there are two classes of men who realize the self. Some are inclined to understand him by empirical philosophical speculation, and others are inclined to know him by devotional work. Text 4. Na karmanam anarambam naishkarmyam purushosnute nacha sanyasanad eva siddhim samadhigachati. Translation: not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. Text 5. Nahi kaschit kshinam api jatu tishtatya karma krit karyate yavasha karma sarva prakriti jargunai. Translation: all men are forced to act helplessly according to the impulses born of the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. Text 6. Karmendriyani samyamya ashyaste manasa smaran indriyartan vimudhatma mithyachara sa uchyate. Translation: One who restrains the senses and organs of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. Text 7. Yastvindriyani manasa niyamyarabhate Arjuna karmendriya karma yogam astasa vishishate. Translation. On the other hand, he who controls the senses by the mind and engages his active organs in works of devotion without attachment is by far superior. Text 8. Niyatam kuru karma tvam karma jahyo hya karmanaham sharira yatra pichate na prasidhya akarmanaham. Translation. Perform your prescribed duty, for action is better than inaction. A man cannot even maintain his physical body without work. We'll go back to 270 now, and I'll read some texts and purports, translations and purports by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai. 270. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. Maharaj, would you like to say anything about this text by chance? A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. So this ocean is so big, but it's not really disturbed by all the rivers that come into it. It's always still and steady and powerful. And a person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires can alone achieve peace. So that person that's not disturbed by this flow of desires, only that person can achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. Sometimes people think erroneously, let me satisfy this itch, whether it's, breaking one of the four regular principles, whether it's gambling, intoxication, illicit sex, meat eating, whatever it is. Oh, I've got this itch. And maybe if I just scratch that itch that one time, then it'll go away, right? Sometimes we can think like that. And it's really dangerous because it can actually, it's like fanning a spark, when we allow ourselves to try to satisfy such desires and go against Krishna and not think about what will please Krishna, because we're part of Krishna's family. And so we have to keep Krishna in the center and try to please. It's all about his enjoyment, which is different than the material world, because everyone out there is thinking about their own enjoyment. But actually, you think, well, I'm part of Krishna's family, and gosh, I can't. I've done it, many lifetimes I've gone against him and displeased him, and I just can't do it again. I'm sick of that. I'm sick of scratching that itch. So don't give into that temptation to scratch it even once, because it's like fanning a spark. Purport. Although the vast ocean is always filled with water, it is always, especially during the rainy season, being filled with much more water. But the ocean remains the same, steady, it is not agitated, nor does it cross beyond the limit of its brink. That is also true of a person fixed in Krishna consciousness. As long as one has the material body, the demands of the body for sense gratification will continue. The devotee, however, is not disturbed by such desires because of his fullness. A Krishna conscious man is not in need of anything because the Lord fulfills all his material necessities. And that's true. Krishna fulfills all your necessities. So if you're being taken care of so nicely, what more is there to want? You know, we're kind of caught up in this wanting mentality because we've been going topsy-turvy up and down the material nature for so long. We're caught in this wanting mentality where we get used to things being really nice and say, oh, what if we added something more? No, Krishna's taking care of you. If the, you know, if your needs are being taken care of, there's so many creatures out there, right? So many creatures, 8,400,000 types of species, and they're all being taken care of. And Krishna is supplying all the foodstuffs for all the elephants out there and all the aquatics, and they're all being taken care of. And they all get as much as they need. And if Krishna wanted to give them more, he would give them more. If he wants to give them less, he'll give them less. But that is that. You don't have to search out so much for these things. The Krishna conscious man is not in need of anything because the Lord fulfills all his material necessities. Therefore, he is like the ocean, always full in himself. Desires may come to him like the waters of the rivers that flow into the ocean, but he is steady in his activities, and he is not even slightly disturbed by desires for sense gratification. That is the proof of a Krishna conscious man, one who has lost all inclinations for material sense gratification, although the desires are present. Because he remains satisfied in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he can remain steady like the ocean and therefore enjoy full peace. Others, however, who fulfill desires even up to the limit of liberation, what to speak of material success, never attain peace. So these people are out there and they're thinking, if I just get a little more success, then I'll be peaceful. I've made $1 million. If I can make $2 million, then I'd be able to, you know, take care of my family the way I want to. And I could just go on so many vacations and everything. But there may not be peace there. In these places, the materialists think are peace. They get there and it may not be as peaceful as they had in mind. And remaining steady, you know, remaining steady, that's a big secret, right? So much of the battle is remaining steady and just submitting to the battle. And, you know, Arjuna Krishna just wanted him to fight. He wasn't saying, you know, die in battle. He was saying just fight and submit to the fight and just remain steady in the fight. And, you know, sometimes we go so fast at first and we take on so much, we learn a lot really quickly, and then things maybe even out a little bit, and sometimes we feel like we're not making progress and all these things. But isn't it about sticking with it and remaining steady through the ups and downs? That's such a big part of it. The fruit of workers, the salvationists, and also the yogis who are after mystic powers are all unhappy because of unfulfilled desires. But the person in Krishna consciousness is happy in the service of the Lord, and he has no desires to be fulfilled. In fact, he does not even desire liberation from the so-called material bondage. The devotees of Krishna have no material desires, and therefore they are in perfect peace. And they don't want to, you know, merge. The idea of merging or the idea of, you know, becoming one with Krishna, devotees don't really like that. It's not really such a nice thought, although the Mayavadis, that seemed to be what they want. So sometimes someone else's eventual goal is actually what we don't like, is actually what we're trying to avoid. And so it's like there's this verse, being free from attachment, fear, and anger, being fully absorbed in me, and taking refuge in me, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me. Shishigonitai Kichai. And in the purport to that verse, Srila Prabhupada speaks of about how the idea of a permanent spiritual identity actually scares a lot of people, and that one has to get rid of all three stages of attachment to the material world. Number one, negligence of spiritual life. So they just neglect spiritual life and they just say, not for me. So that's a stage of attachment to the material world. And then number two, a fear of a spiritual identity. A lot of people fear this idea of a spiritual identity that doesn't involve some sort of merging. It's like, no, you have your individual spiritual identity. And that scares people because they realize that what they do actually every day matters. And then number three, conception of void that underlies the frustration of life. The conception of void that underlies the frustration of life. And so people are overwhelmed by these things and they're attached. These are the three stages of attachment to the material worlds. Text 71. A person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. So giving up all desires for sense gratification, living free from desires, and giving up all sense of proprietorship and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. So giving up this sense of proprietorship that we own things and that this is mine, and that mentality, and also devoid of false ego. It doesn't say, ego, just ego. It says false ego, which is not the true ego, the true spiritual identity that I'm part and parcel of Krishna, a small part individual identity. But this false ego of me and mine, that person can attain real peace. Purport. To become desireless means not to desire anything for sense gratification. In other words, desire for becoming Krishna conscious is actually desirelessness. So that's an interesting sentence. In other words, desire for becoming Krishna conscious is actually desirelessness. To understand one's actual position as the eternal servitor of Krishna, without falsely claiming this material body to be oneself, and without falsely claiming proprietorship over anything in the world, is the perfect stage of Krishna consciousness. It's one of the fundamental teachings of the Bhagavad Gita is that we're not these bodies, and it's easy to get locked into that type of thinking that I'm this body, and every animal is thinking that, I'm a dog, I look like a dog, I act like a dog, I'm a dog, that's me. But we as humans get to know, take a little spiritual advancement that the animals can't get. And that's why it's a very thing to not waste, to take this human birth as very seriously and not let it go to waste. Take this chance to really elevate in Krishna consciousness, and that is perfection. One who is situated in this perfect stage knows that because Krishna is the proprietor of everything, therefore everything must be used for the satisfaction of Krishna. Arjuna did not want to fight for his own sense satisfaction, but when he became fully Krishna conscious, he fought because Krishna wanted him to fight. For himself, there was no desire to fight, but for Krishna, the same Arjuna fought to his best ability. So Arjuna didn't want to fight because he was scared of some reaction, and he was on the other side were his teachers, his relatives, his friends, and he said, "What will come of the kingdom, and what will come of the future if we defeat all these people? If I kill all these people?" And he said, "They're actually already dead. The future has already been worked out. But you're just an instrument. Just be my instrument, Arjuna." Desire for the satisfaction of Krishna is really desirelessness. It is not an artificial attempt to abolish desires. So we're not abolishing desires, just none there. Just none there is the goal. The living entity cannot be desireless or senseless But he does have to change the quality of the desires. A materially desireless person certainly knows that everything belongs to Krishna. Ishavasham Iram Sarvam, and therefore he does not falsely claim proprietorship over anything. This transcendental knowledge is based on self-realization, namely knowing perfectly well that every living entity is the eternal part and parcel of Krishna in spiritual identity. And therefore the eternal position of the living entity is never on the level of Krishna or greater than him. This understanding of Krishna consciousness is the basic principle of real peace. So when we're not the controller, when we're not the center, we can actually get peace because we don't have to juggle everything. We don't have to do it all ourselves. We realize we're part of a team, and we've got Krishna right in the center, and we're part of a team, and we don't have to do it all ourselves. We're there to help each other, and then we can have peace, a little bit of peace, and that's what's missing in this material world. There's no peace. There's no peace here. And text 72. That is the way of the spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. Being so situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God. Purport. One can attain Krishna consciousness or divine life at once, within a second, or one cannot attain such a state of life even after millions of births. It's only a matter of understanding and accepting the fact. Khatvanga Maharaj attained this state of life just a few minutes before his death by surrendering unto Krishna. Nirvana means ending the process of materialistic life. According to Buddhist philosophy, there is only void after the completion of this material life, but Bhagavad Gita teaches differently. Actual life begins after the completion of this material life. For the most materialist, it is sufficient to know that one has to end this materialistic way of life. But for persons who are spiritually advanced, there is another life after this materialistic life. Before ending this life, if one fortunately becomes Krishna conscious, he at once attains the stage of Brahma Nirvana. There is no difference between the kingdom of God and the devotional service of the Lord, since both of them are on the absolute plane. To be engaged in the transcendental love and service of the Lord is to have attained the spiritual kingdom. In the material world, there are activities of sense gratification, whereas in the spiritual world, there are activities of Krishna consciousness. Attaining of Krishna consciousness, even during this life, is immediate attainment of Brahman. Who is situated in Krishna consciousness has certainly already entered into the kingdom of God. Brahman is just the opposite of matter. Therefore, Brahmi Sthiti means not on the platform of material activities. Devotional service of the Lord is accepted in the Bhagavad Gita as the liberated stage. Therefore, Brahmi Sthiti is liberation from material bondage. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has summarized this second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita as being the contents for the whole text. In the Bhagavad Gita, the subject matters are Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. In the second chapter, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga have been clearly discussed, and a glimpse of Bhakti Yoga has also been given as the contents for the complete text. Chapter 3. Arjuna said, O Janardana, O Keshava, why do you urge me to engage in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work? And so part of the question is like renunciation or work. And maybe it's not that clear. Maybe it's a little bit of both. But he says that working in Krishna conscious is superior, and Krishna recommends Nishkama Karma Yoga, which is work combined with knowledge and detachment, and offering the fruits of such work for the satisfaction of Vishnu. This allows the soul, who is by nature active, to be purified, also to set an example. Krishna was asking him to fight, so he wants Arjuna to set an example. That's a pretty big responsibility, to set an example for all of humanity, for eternity. But he was in that position. So Krishna asks him to fight, to set an example.
And so the purport to this one, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, has very elaborately described the constitution of the soul in the previous chapter with a view to deliver his intimate friend Arjuna from the ocean of material grief. And the path of realization has been recommended, Buddhi Yoga, or Krishna consciousness. Sometimes Krishna consciousness is misunderstood to be inertia, and one with such a misunderstanding often withdraws to a secluded place to become fully Krishna conscious by chanting the holy name of Lord Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. But without being trained in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, it is not advisable to chant the holy name of Krishna in a secluded place where one may acquire only cheap adoration from the innocent public. Arjuna also thought of Krishna consciousness, or Buddhi Yoga, or intelligence in spiritual advancement of knowledge, as something like retirement from active life and the practice of penance and austerity at a secluded place. In other words, he wanted to skillfully avoid the fighting by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. But as a sincere student, he placed the matter before his master and questioned Krishna as to his best course of action. In answer, Lord Krishna elaborately explained Karma Yoga, or work in Krishna consciousness, in this third chapter. So finding a bona fide spiritual master can help the knowledge to how to properly worship, how to properly live, how to properly chant the Lord's names, so many things, hundreds of things. And that's a bona fide spiritual master. And we're talking about being steady, don't forget to enjoy the process a little bit, because if we, or if the student or the teacher stops enjoying the process, the progress also slows down. So attitude is everything, they say. Enjoy the process and having patience, like Mukunda Das and Lord Chaitanya. We get the lessons and situations we need, not necessarily the ones we want. As it is said, man proposes, God disposes. And Mukunda Das was an associate of Lord Chaitanya. He kept associating with the Mayavadis over and over again. And Lord Chaitanya, who is the incarnation of God as a devotee, he came in his combination of Srimati Radharani and Krishna because he wanted to see that bliss of devotion that Radharani feels. And so Lord Chaitanya was elucidating things so clearly, and he was taking very hardline stances and expanding on the Bhagavad Gita and elucidating so many things. And so Mukunda Das kept associating with these Mayavadis, and Lord Chaitanya would say, no, don't do that. Until finally, Lord Chaitanya said, I will not see him anymore. I just can't do it. I won't see him anymore. And he was Mukunda was pretty distraught. And so, he's begging his friends, can you please ask him when he will see me again? And Lord Chaitanya, the word came back. And Lord Chaitanya told them, millions of years, and they were pretty worried. They said, oh no, maybe we shouldn't tell him that because he might take that really harshly and maybe do something that worked. And so told that to Mukunda, and Mukunda surprisingly started jumping up and down and dancing. He said, oh, the Lord will see me. He will see me. That was wonderful, even after millions of years, and dancing. And then they told Lord Chaitanya that, and he said, okay, bring him in. So you just never quite know what to expect, but attitude is so important, and patience. It's like, when I was in college, I was kind of in a hurry to graduate, because I'd been in there a while, maybe a little too long. It was getting expensive and it was taking a lot of time. I was down in Texas, and so I was not necessarily, I should have really enjoyed the process, but I was in a hurry to graduate. And this last thing was the big final concert or whatever. And, sometimes when we're in a hurry, we don't necessarily look at all the details. So, and things like that. So there were some mistakes I made leading up to this final concert. And I didn't invite everyone I was supposed to. I didn't put up the flyers I was supposed to, so many things. And I actually didn't pass it just didn't work. He said, no, it didn't. I was, getting close to graduation. And it's like, oh, I didn't pass. And so I remember going this concert, and my teacher was going to be there. And I saw him there after the concert. I said, can I do that again? And for some of us, it's hard to ask those questions or to ask for help. I said, can I do it again? And he said, yes, you can do it again. And so he left, and I kind of lost, became emotional. And the tears came after he had left, and I was still in there, just upstairs by myself, and just like, I was overwhelmed that I got this second chance. And some of our teachers are kings of second chances, and it's so wonderful, but we don't want to abuse that, of course. But I got the second chance, and I had to come back, or I had to stay, had to do it in the summer, just a couple of weeks later, so it wasn't a big deal. But everyone who came that was supposed to come, and it was done right, so I needed to go through that experience. And every experience we're going through, we need to go through for some reason, because Krishna is having us go through this experience. So patience and not being in a hurry, and things like that. Text 2, my intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively what is most beneficial for me. Purport. In the previous chapter, as a prelude to the Bhagavad Gita, many different paths were explained, such as Sankhya Yoga, Buddhi Yoga, control of the senses by intelligence, work without fruited desire, and the position of the neophyte. This was all presented unsystematically. A more organized outline of the path would be necessary for action and understanding. Arjuna, therefore, wanted to clear up these apparently confusing matters so that any common man could accept them without misinterpretation. Although Krishna had no intention of confusing Arjuna by any jugglery of words, Arjuna could not follow the process of Krishna consciousness, either by inertia or active service. In other words, by his questions, he is clearing the path of Krishna consciousness for all students who seriously want to understand the mystery of the Bhagavad Gita. Sometimes they would ask Prabhupada a question, and he would say, oh, that's good that you're wondering these things, because if someone didn't care about it, they may not ask. So I know sometimes Prabhupada said, oh, that is good you're asking these things. And then text 3, the Blessed Lord said, O sinless Arjuna, I have already explained that there are two classes of men who realize the self. Some are inclined to understand him by empirical philosophical speculation, and others are inclined to know him by devotional work. Purport. In the second chapter, verse 39, the Lord explained two kinds of procedures, namely Sankhya Yoga and Karma Yoga, or Buddhi Yoga. In this verse, the Lord explains the same more clearly. Sankhya Yoga, or the analytical study of the nature of spirit and matter, is the subject matter for persons who are inclined to speculate and understand things by experimental knowledge and philosophy. The other class of men work in Krishna consciousness, as it is explained in the 61st verse of the second chapter. The Lord has explained also in the 39th verse that by working by the principles of Buddhi Yoga, also known as Karma Yoga, also known as Krishna consciousness, one can be relieved from the bonds of action, and furthermore, there is no flaw in the process. The same principle is more clearly explained in the 61st verse, that this Buddhi Yoga is to depend entirely on the Supreme, or more specifically on Krishna. And in this way, all the senses can be brought under control very easily. So again, depending on the Supreme, relying on the Supreme, and just getting out of our own way and saying, and depending on Krishna. And therefore, both the yogas are interdependent as religion and philosophy. Religion without philosophy is sentiment or sometimes fanaticism, while philosophy without religion is mental speculation. The ultimate goal is Krishna, because the philosophers who are also sincerely searching after the absolute truth come in the end to Krishna consciousness. So this is the destination for everybody. This is where you get to. If you keep searching, if you keep seeking life after life, this is where you come. This is also stated in the Bhagavad Gita. The whole process is to understand the real position of the self in relation to the super self. The indirect process is philosophical speculation, by which gradually one may come to the point of Krishna consciousness. And the other process is directly connecting with everything in Krishna consciousness. Of these two, the path of Krishna consciousness is better because it does not depend on purifying the senses by a philosophical process. Krishna consciousness is itself the purifying process, and by the direct method of devotional service, it is simultaneously easy and sublime. So our teachers, Krishna and Lord Chaitanya, and our teachers, Srila Prabhupada, they have made it easy and sublime, and they've simplified it for us. So let's be very thankful for that, and let's show them our gratitude by how we act, and how we work as a team, and everything. And speaking of, there's said to be two classes of people, the impersonalist and the personalist. The impersonalist creates fruitive activities out of fear, but personalists know his position as servant of God. They have no desire for personal sense gratification. This makes one immune to all sorts of reactionary elements of work. And Sripad Sankaracharya taught this impersonalism to kind of delude the population, to mislead the population, to kind of mislead the atheists and things like that. And that's Sripada Sankaracharya. But we're trying to, there's 4 defects of the conditioned soul, imperfect senses, prone to make mistakes, prone to illusion, and the cheating propensity. So just trying to transcend these things, and Janma karma chame divyam evam yogati tatvataha tyatvadeham pranarjama etimam etiso arjuna. One who knows my transcendental appearance and activities does not take birth again, but attains my transcendental abode, or Arjuna. Was there any additions, thoughts, questions on that? Jagannath Prabhu?
So you were speaking about, I think you were saying to submit to the process, or submit to, I can't remember, but I think you were saying we have to submit to something. And I was just wondering, so can we submit to Maya, or should we fight Maya? I don't really know what to do with this, because I was told one time we should cooperate with Maya, but then I'm also told we should fight Maya. So it's kind of difficult. So I was just wondering if you could clear this up for me.
Yeah, that's nice. I hope I can provide some breadcrumbs, hopefully, and not go against any teachings of anyone here. But Maya is like a thankless servant of Krishna, and she doesn't even she kind of hides in front of Krishna, or turns away from Krishna, is afraid to face him. But it's kind of like the prison guard, the thankless task of the prison guard, of the prison administrator, and how even it's thankless, but it's necessary. Just like maybe the police, it's a thankless task, but it is necessary. And Maya, just knowing Maya, knowing that it's there, and surrendering. So many people are submitting to Maya when they give in to their desires, and they're surrendering to Maya. And we want to kind of acknowledge Maya's power and say, wow, that power never goes away. The power of the ocean never goes away. But if you look at how a surfer can surf on the wave, and successfully, kind of make that happen. And sure, the surfer might fall down every once in a while, but the expert surfer knows how to avoid so many pitfalls. And but surrendering to just admitting her power, but I would maybe saying, yeah, it's a little bit complicated, I guess. You're right. But just acknowledging that power of the ocean is always there, that power of Maya is always there, and just being aware of it. And it's part of Krishna, that's also part of Krishna. And so he doesn't want his devotees in devotional service to be bewildered by anything. So he's given us so many tools, and he's actually helping us. He's telling Maya sometimes, leave this one alone a little bit today, and things like that. So if we do everything we're supposed to do, we may not have it as hard as the person down the block who's really going up against Maya every day and just fighting and banging their head. And we can kind of surf the wave and be okay and make a beautiful artistic statement. And anybody have any additions or thoughts on that? Extra? Bhagavad Gita as it is. Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Krishna, Krishna, Krishna.